Mr. Speaker, indeed, this motion will tell today who are the sheep and who are the goats. The motion requires in its preambular clause that whereas all members of Parliament are required to file annual income tax returns to the Guyana Revenue Authority in compliance with the Income Tax Act, Chapter 8101, to say the least, is inaccurate, misleading, incomplete, incoherent. The income tax law does not state that all members of Parliament should file returns. The income tax law behoves all persons, defines all persons with a qualification, either a corporate person or an individual, to declare their returns for the purposes of income tax, not members of Parliament. So that the intention is misleading, and ordinarily in a court of law I would have submitted that this motion is inadmissible because it is premised on falsehood. One does not come to a court of law as this National Assembly. The Parliament is the highest court of law, and beseeches the court of law. It says you must come with clean hands, and you come with subterfuge. So the Parliament, in the language of the motion, that says that a law says what the law did not say, that itself is misleading. Secondly, as in contracts or an agreement, ordinarily between persons, legal persons, you cannot conspire or agree to an illegality or to commit an illegality. The law says, the income tax law requires the filing of returns for a period of up to 7 years. This motion is asking for a declaration of return for a period beyond what the law says you should file, to 10 years. Therefore, the motion is trying to induce this Honorable House, the highest lawmaking forum, to conspire and to vote, if they so vote, on something that violates the law. And it shows the desperation behind bringing a motion of this nature, where it, honorable member says it will separate the sheep from the goats. And when it says that all members of this House should declare their returns, the honorable member, nothing is wrong with that, except that some members earn tax-free salaries. And therefore, you're asking for someone who was being exempt from taxation on salary to declare a salary that has been exempted from taxation. And also, pensions are non-taxable. And the leader of the opposition, he receives a pension for his salary, sir, which is non-taxable.
So many thousands of Guyanese who receive pension.
And
Honorable members, we are about to get beyond what is reasonable. I would urge members not to single out honorable members in their presentation here. Please proceed, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the motion says, whereas all members of Parliament are required to file annual income tax. This is the motion. All members of Parliament. The leader of the opposition, sir, is a member of the Parliament. I am not calling name. I am not dealing with name.
Honorable Prime Minister, some members, and one member in particular to my left, perhaps is not aware of the pitch of his voice. But I must tell him, and I'm sure he knows who he is, that the pitch of his voice disturbs the chair. Please proceed.
Sir, in a debate, if I may humbly say, Your Honor, one has to present arguments that are coherent, arguments that are logical, arguments that are factual. And it is a fact that not all members of this Parliament, all members of Parliament are required to declare taxes. Therefore, you have some goats and you probably have some sheep. So we are not all goats and not all sheep. Question is that the motion is premised on a fallacy, an Orwellian fallacy, that some men are more equal than others, where all men are declared to be equal. And if I were a pensioner and earning my pension as a salary, then why tell me that I need to declare my returns if my pension is non-taxable, excluded from taxation? But that is a mischief. The mischief of this motion is to be able to open the floodgate for some to escape the net of scrutiny and accountability as they could have escaped, because the president does not pay tax either. So if you were a president before, you didn't have to declare. And therefore, not only once, but twice, the fish is allowed to run the net. So where is all this protestation of clean hands? Where some hands must be clean and other hands must be hidden? Your Honor, let me say this. Honorable mover of the motion had great representation for people who are concerned about who been thieving. But this motion comes after the gate has been shut. The horses are bolted. We have, sir, a requirement under the Integrity Commission Act, Part 3, Section 13. I have submitted all my returns except for 1 year, when I wrote to the Integrity Commission asking the Secretary to provide me information whether there was a chairperson of the Integrity Commission in 2012, 2013. And I was told by the Secretary, I will get to you later. Never got back to me. So that, don't come with that. But But so let me say this, that this integrity legislation says in section 13, every person who is a person in public life shall file with the Commission a declaration containing the particulars referred to, and those particulars are in relation to the person's income, the person's asset, the person's spouse, the person's children of a certain age, qualified under the law as an interested person, and they're supposed to declare their assets. If there was anything that was required by the public who was suspected that there had been pervasive corruption by people in public office, it was to publish the declaration made to the Integrity Commission. But then you will hear confidentiality. Can't publish that. But the income tax law also provides for confidentiality, even though we knew that the confidentiality had been breached. And all are we there in this together? When they conspire selectively to witch hunt and to go after citizens for the purposes of recrimination and discrimination, they conspire to have confidentiality broken. So today, sir, if there was any requirement for the declaration of assets of public in public life, it ought to have been under the Integrity Commission. If it had been made to function, if it had not been rendered headless for many years, we would have been able to have declaration by persons in public life. Now, Your Honor, I refer to a document, Fighting Corruption in Eastern Europe, where some members here have been trained in Central Asia. Asset, I have never been trained. Never have been trained in the Russian communist bloc. Asset declarations for public officials. Not trained. Independent Guyanese national patriotic thinker. Not indoctrinated. And proud, compliant with tax regulations. May I refer to this document that says that in public life, and I recommend this for all members of Parliament to read, that it requires the declaration of assets. Assets include incomes. But there is a requirement under our law. I believe that this is a very well-crafted law, the Integrity Commission Act of 1997. And it is perhaps one of the finest last legacy of the late Chedi Jagan, that he had wanted so much to see that there was integrity in public life, that he had even said we should have no more than 2 terms. In fact, he had wanted 1 term of presidency because he said the thieving starts in the 2nd term. He would have died then if he hadn't died before. And he said the reason in this book, so I quote, criminal sanctions are not common in relation to asset declaration systems. To be in a conflict of interest is not a crime per se, but may lead to crimes. Besides, criminal sanctions required stronger evidence than administrative sanctions. And therefore, it says here that in all asset declarations law, there should be sanctions for provision of false information, which is required and has to be verified. It says here, while there is a global trend towards greater disclosure, striking the right balance between public disclosure and protection of privacy remains a subject for debate. There are strong reasons for disclosing at least data of political officials, such as MPs, data, assets, not incomes, assets. Politicians should be prepared to provide explanations regarding the disclosed information if there are any serious concerns raised in the media about civil society. In order to increase the positive effects of declaration systems, the declared data should be available to investigators for detecting cases of possible criminal offenses, so that the convention as regards combating corruption and corrupt practices and the accumulation of dirty money has been that declarations must be made not simply to the public in a matter of bombast and a kind of public acquiescing to an appetite in the public for information, but for the detection of criminal accumulation of wealth. I have here, sir, my bank books going back to many, many years. Didn't bring all of them. 2002. And all of this will trace from 2002 to 2015 what accounts I have which have been declared and which a former president would have known to the Integrity Commission year after year, the sums of money I earned. And every year in a declaration to the income tax. In fact, so much over-compliant was I that in one year, 2008 I believe, there was a refund of money from income tax. So that it is not a question of merely making declarations. It is a question of being able to provide information that could be interrogated and investigated for possible criminal practices. So this motion is premature in the sense that it sought not to address the dilemma that the Guyanese people had wanted answer for, and which of course in their saner and wiser disposition voted against, which was endemic corruption, and this is why you have a regime change. They understood that. But this motion is asking for a declaration of, public declaration of incomes from members of parliament going 10 years back, when, as I said, the law itself didn't permit a 7-year. For me, yes, in principle, all members of parliament, all, excluding none, there should be no goat among the sheep. No goat should be left out. We are all either goats or sheep, but the question is that it must require in an honest way. If you want this House to pronounce on a motion of this sort, it should have been conceived from the standpoint that it truly wants all MPs to declare their assets. It may be a laudable objective that one day we will have published on the Parliament's website the incomes of all members of Parliament. We will have their assets as well. How they acquire the assets they have. Your Honor, if I may, as an attorney yourself, we are confined to the principles and ethics of our profession. But we often have people who come to you in court, particularly for alimony, in conjugal relationship, and you often would hear someone say, look, I only got $10 million, but I can give my wife 5 of the 10. And it appears equitable, 50-50. Any lawyer would grasp at that, especially if they're dealing with a lawyer that is very talented. But on the other side, but it must stir your conscience, and all the pontification about morality If after you have accepted the $5 million for your poor female client, you saw the person who said, I had only 10, build a house for in excess of $100 million. And became part, and I would see it become part of the real estate industry, selling and buying, selling and buying, selling and building. That is not caught by the Income Tax Act. That is caught under the Integrity Act. If everyone were to declare their asset and say where they got the money from to do all of this. So, sir, we will vote against this motion. We have an amendment. We have an amendment that is more generic, that is aimed, should not be allowed. You want to shut me up on my feet? Should not be allowed. I am calling no names. The Guyanese people understand. Do not underestimate the capacity of the Guyanese people to understand. So that, sir, we are going to table an amendment to this motion to have a generic presentation. And I say that we are on this side unalterably committed to good governance and to accountability. We have brought forward this government a code of service in which the code of service documents in the tradition of the Integrity Act those requirements that behove persons in public life to declare their assets and to have investigation into accumulation that may appear to have taken place outside of incomes derived from lawful activity. There was no one excluded, I believe, here in this law. But, sir, I believe that this has nothing to do with whether persons have filed or didn't file. We are saying the law requires the establishment of an integrity commission. And if the integrity commission is properly established, there must be a requirement on all members, persons in public life to declare their assets. Because there is also a sanction in the law, in Part 4, Section 25. Part 4, Section 25, a code of conduct. And this code of conduct is in addition to the Criminal Law Offences Act and Summary Jurisdiction Offences Act that makes it criminal to breach certain of these codes and certain requirements of the law. Simply asking this House to vote on a motion to declare assets, to declare incomes to the public, in fact, is a diversion as to what really is necessary to combat pervasive corruption and the accumulation of assets due to all manner of illegal activities and monies that are accumulated over the last 10 years. This, as I said, is closing the gate after the horses have bolted, and this is trying to create a massive political diversion from those who ought to be held accountable to those who are in private life prior to many people in private life prior to coming here. So that if one were to manifest oneself as a true adherent to qualities of scrutiny and integrity in public life, I believe it would have behoven the former government to declare from top down and down up, to declare in public their assets accumulated over the last 10 years. Thank you very much.
So I rise to move an amendment to the motion in the name of the Honourable Member Edghill, and I do so in the memory of former Deputy Speaker Mrs. Bakker. Honorable Speaker, I move the amendments that be it resolved that this National Assembly supports the enforcement of the legal requirement for all members of the National Assembly to file income tax returns and to make annual declarations to the Integrity Commission, and be it further resolved that this National Assembly supports the work of the Government of Guyana in ensuring that the Integrity Commission is independent, efficient, respected, and able to ensure the accountability of all public officials, including members of Parliament. Those are the amendments proposed. Thank you, sir.
This afternoon, I rise to speak to this motion that is placed before this August House for consideration and acceptance by my colleague friend, the Honorable Bishop Juan Edgell. First of all, Mr. Speaker, let me say how appalled I am at the content of this motion that is being brought before us today. And I ask the question, does the National Assembly now have the responsibility to do the work of the Guyana Revenue Authority? Mr. Speaker, according to the laws of Guyana, Income Tax Act, Chapter 8101, and if I quote from Section 60, that is captioned, Returns and Particulars of Income, it says, every person being an individual whose income is not less than $600,000 shall, on or before the prescribed day in every year, deliver to the Commissioner General a true, and I want to stress the word true, and correct return of the whole of his income. Whole of his income from every source whatsoever for the year immediately preceding the year of assessment, and shall, if absent from Guyana, give the name of an agent residing therein. Mr. Speaker, I took the time to stress on the word true and correct and every source for a reason. Because being in government for the past 8 months, that my colleague Chief Whip on the other side emphasized, we have had many discoveries. And I want to say to this House that the book of Revelation will be read soon. Because it's okay, you know, my colleagues on the other side boasted about, you know, providing or sending in their income tax every year. That's good. But is it true? Is it correct? Because if you buy land cheap and sell it back expensive, it's income. Have you declared it?
All right. Talk about it, talk.
My colleague, the Honorable Bishop, quoted Section 4A of the Act that talks about all sources of income must be declared. And I rest my case with that. Mr. Speaker, this very act went on to say that any person who refuses, fails, or neglects to perform any act required by this section shall be guilty of an offense. So, Mr. Speaker, the act does not only specify who should pay the income tax, it also speaks to the penalties that must be applied by the GRA to persons who have defaulted in this regard. So, this is not a matter of integrity, as my colleague said over there. It's a matter of applying the law. Mr. Speaker, the motion further asks for 10 years income tax return when the Act requires you to only have 8 years of your documentation. And so I don't understand the reason of the mover of this motion to request more than what the Act complies you to have. And I want to believe that there is some sinister move behind this. Mr. Speaker, the Act also gives the deadline of 30th of April each year for submission of all income tax returns. And I dare say, Mr. Speaker, that all Guyanese are aware of this deadline. So it's nothing new to us. Section 67 on the offenses says, any person who refuses, fails or neglects, there's another section, to deliver any return required by the preceding section shall be guilty of an offense. Mr. Speaker, the motion further speaks of transparency and accountability. And when I read those words, I smiled. May I remind this House that it was one of the most noble men in this country who stands at the helm of this country who said these words: if you do the crime, you will do the time. And this statement, Mr. Speaker, sent a clear message to all peoples of this country, because it is not discriminatory in any way. Mr. Speaker, since this AP and UAFC government took over the leadership of this country, there are two main pillars on which all principles and policies are based on, and those are transparency and accountability. Please allow me, Mr. Speaker, to make two references to support my presentation. And the first one is reported in the Guyana Times, June 27, 2015, and the caption is, government says it will not budge on financial audits. Permit me to quote the Honorable Winston DeCosta Jordan. And it says in paragraph 2, Jordan made the comments while speaking on the motion to commend President David Granger's speech at the opening of the 11th Parliament. The People's Progressive Party Civic has since objected to two of the main auditors, Chartered Accountants Christopher Ram and Anand Golsaran. Both men were fierce critics of the former PPPC administration and have publicly commented on some of the entities they are being contracted to audit. Jordan told the House during the debate on a motion of the President's speech that transparency and accountability were tantamount and were important in ensuring that the mandate of the new government, the reduction of poverty, is achieved, as he further added that there was a nexus between accountability and the level of poverty which exists in this country. My second quote is, I refer to budget speech of 2014 by the then opposition leader, now President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, David Arthur Granger, And this is what he said in the budget speech. APNU is on the road, listen to us. We do not know everything, but we know a lot. And we know there are problems. That is why we have called for a commission of inquiry into our private school system. We have called for a commission of inquiry into the public health, where young mothers have so frequently died. We have called for a commission of inquiry into criminal violence. We are the ones who are calling for an investigation into the assassination of Saturday Osa. We are the ones who are calling for an inquiry. Mr. Speaker, there can be no faith in a government if our highest offices are excused from scrutiny. They should be setting, or we should be setting, the example of transparency. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that at the dawn of his administration, the now President of the USA, this is what he said: a democracy requires accountability, and accountability requires transparency. I believe transparency in government is key to restoring our nation's faith in its elected leaders. Because, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, we are not accountable to ourselves, but to the people. And our success is a result of what we do. And the only cure for the level of corruption we face in this country over the past 23 years is transparency and accountability. And this APNUFC coalition knows that, and we practice it. And that is one of the reasons why we sit in the seat of government today.
All right.
We are aware, Mr. Speaker, that the success of public governance will ultimately be judged not by governments, not by the international community, but by our citizens. And it is our citizens who are demanding greater transparency and accountability from this government. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I would like to say to the author of this motion that we are lawmakers, not lawbreakers, at least on this side of the House. And all Guyanese, whether you're an MP, whether once you hold public office, have to pay income tax once you're eligible. And all MPs have been complying over the years. If you know different, prove it. I want to close, Mr. Speaker, with a quotation from the Bible. And when those who oppose Jesus, his teachings, they try to entrap him, and they ask him a question: should we pay tax? And he asks them for a coin. He says, whose face is on it? They said, Caesar. He said, then render unto Caesar the things of Caesar, and render unto God the things of God. Mr. Speaker, I therefore do not support this motion, since I know that we as MPs in this National Assembly are credible people, people of integrity, and I repeat, at least on this side of the House, and law-abiding citizens. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, if by chance there are any shortcomings in the Act, we have the capability, we have the ability, we have the expertise, and we've already begun to put things in place like the Ministerial Code of Service, like the Code of Conduct for all ministers. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that as Guyanese, as leaders, We will comply with the laws of this country. And transparency and accountability will continue to be two pillars on which this country is built. Thank you.
I wish to compliment the presentations of Honorable Member Dharmlal, the Honorable Member Representative of Region 6, East Berbice Quarantine, and the presentation of Honorable Member Ramson in some parts. Because, and of course, the very short, in fact, Mr. Speaker, giving credence to that Shakespearean adage about brevity, the Honorable Member Selman, all spoke about this House following the rules. The motion brought by the Honorable Goodley Bishop is asking this House to break the rules. All of the members I refer to who I've complimented asked the House to observe the rules. And the rules are that every member of this House, as a citizen, must submit their tax returns. That is the rule. It is the law. Honorable members I just mentioned asked us to do so. So we agree with you, and we are going to do so. We are asked, Mr. Speaker, to comply with the Integrity Commission and observe the laws and the rules, and we are going to do so. And so we thank you for reminding us of our duty, both civic duty and the duty that we have to discharge as members of Parliament. So, Mr. Speaker, we are somewhat bemused as to what is required of this House. The House is being asked to, Mr. Speaker, break the law and then in futuro, in the future, pass a law to make that which is illegal, legal. Having asked us to release in public, then we must go on later on to make that legal. And no House, Mr. Speaker, which is considered indeed, despite what has been said earlier, the highest court in the land, because this is the Supreme Court, not of judicature, but of Parliament. And those of us, Mr. Speaker, who are legally trained know that. You can't ask the highest lawmaking body in the land to do that which is illegal. So, Mr. Speaker, as I said, my contribution is going to be short. It has been hinted, but not prosecuted, that amendments which are in my name are outside of the scope of this motion. Yet I return to the statement first uttered by the Honorable Bishop Edghill, when he said that this motion is about transparency and accountability. That statement of his was, Mr. Speaker, taken up by other honorable members on that side of the House. So it is in that spirit that I move some amendments, because at the end of the day, this is not about who earned what money in private practice, whether as a medical doctor, as a lawyer, or as an accountant, or consultancy fees. It was about transparency and accountability. And that is why our motion, our amendments, speak to transparency and accountability. Mr. Speaker, moving on slightly, I wish to mention that there are, of course, submitted in my name and dated the 6th of January, an amendment, but I will set the hearts and the minds of the opposition at ease by saying that I am going to withdraw these amendments, Mr. Speaker. But having done so, I'm still within my right to speak to some of them, but I will withdraw them. But I will retain, with your leave, sir, and the support of my colleagues, the resolve clause, but the whereas preamble, I'm going to withdraw, because it might be too much for them. Mr. Speaker, it may be too much for the honorable members of the opposition. So, Mr. Speaker, much has been said about confidentiality. And if it is that members of the opposition feel so strongly about public accountability, they're within their rights. to publish their declarations, and I'm surprised that you haven't done so. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you should be leading the charge. Put it up on your website. Go ahead. You don't need a motion to do what you say is right. If you so strongly believe in the correctness and the rectitude of this, go ahead. Lead by example and publish your tax returns. So, Mr. Speaker, we don't need a motion telling us that what we should do. And I have to say this, Mr. Speaker, there seems to be some unease on the other side of the House about who said what and rumors and accusations. If you have nothing to fear, you would not be uncomfortable. If you have nothing to fear, you would not be uncomfortable. But so if it is that you're so anxious and so hurt and so bothered, put up your tax returns for the world to see and prove once and for all that is being said against you is not true. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to just quote Starbuck News of the 9th of January, the chairman, in fact, of the Guyana Revenue Authority, Mr. Raw Lucas. And Mr. Speaker, the headline here says, GRA vows to protect taxpayers' data. This, Mr. Speaker, is a very hallowed, sacred, even sacrosanct principle in tax collection and in revenue matters. Just 2 weeks ago, this House passed a bill dealing with this very issue it was an amendment brought in the name of the Honourable Member and Minister of Finance. And Mr. Speaker, on the opposition side, not once, not twice, not thrice, not 4 times or 5, we heard cries of data falling into the wrong hands and people being exposed, and what happens if things go public, and we ought not to let it happen, and how can we guarantee and assure that people's private submissions will be held confidential? How it is now, Mr. Speaker, we are approbating and we're reprobating. How it is now, just 2 weeks after. Confusion. The very thing that you asked us not to do 2 weeks ago, you're asking us 2 weeks later to break the law. The highest lawmaking body is being told, break the law and give people's information out. So we are, as a government, committed, Mr. Speaker, to accountability and to transparency. We're asking this House to support the amendment so that all of us submit the declarations to the Integrity Commission as required, and to submit their annual returns, and, Mr. Speaker, to observe the laws of Guyana. Not to break the law, but to observe the rules, as the good member, the Honorable Mahadio, said earlier. Let us observe and respect the rules of Guyana. And one of those rules is submit your returns. So I will not delay the House, except to say that, Mr. Speaker, we believe that Honorable Bishop may have had a good idea at the beginning, but either bad influences or, Mr. Speaker, some other persuasions entered into his mind. We believe that good intentions went awry. We believe that good intentions, yes, went awry. And so while we support in spirit the presentation of our declarations as per law, we do not support, Mr. Speaker, the manner in which the opposition wishes it to be done. We do, however, invite them to lead by example and to do so tonight. Perhaps if by in the morning we could wake up and see your declarations, perhaps we could persuade all Guyanese to follow suit. So, Mr. Speaker, at the appropriate time, I will move the amendments, except to say that I formally now withdraw the whereas clauses of the amendments that I proposed, and I will ask this House to consider the amendment to the resolve clause of Bishop Edghill. Thank you, sir.
Speaking from the government bench, Your Honor, we had stated what is the state of the law and what is the state as regards the motion that the government would not knowingly subscribe to the undermining of our laws. And if we did so, the motion is inviting us to do something that will constitute the undermining of the rule of law, undermining of provisions of law already in our statutes. And it is, for me, a criticism or an attack on the government. And the leader of the opposition, while on his feet, essayed to bring discredit to the government via the leader of the House when he introduced language and words that had not emanated from my mouth while I made my contribution. And therefore, to be able to discredit the government in this way, even though he had been essayed to move away from ad hominem and move to hypothetical statement, he had already introduced to you, Your Honor, that I had said the words that he spoken in this House, which is not so. The records will speak that I had not spoken to the issue of how much taxes I have paid. I do pay taxes though. Now, sir, this motion also is inviting members of the government who have not been in public life prior to being sworn as members of parliament or as ministers, are inviting them when they were not public officials to declare publicly their income returns for 10 years prior to them being part of this government. For me, the motion is seeking to corral persons who have not been part and parcel of public life, part and parcel of governance, to do something the law and no law as exists requires them to do. And to acquiesce to that would be indulging in transgressing the law. This government would not do anything that will bring people who are outside the requirement of law to make declarations within a law by way of a motion to make such declaration. And that is why I rose to correct the record as far as I can. And also, sir, while speaking here representing the government, I had mentioned some matter that might be considered extraneous with regards to when corruption begins. And it was no wonder that as an assault on the government, the leader of the opposition had said that maybe corruption begins in the first term of this government. That was an attempt to close this government in the dirty linen of corruption. And I repudiate that. I refute that categorically, that this government still, its hands are clean. And we assert that with force as much as I could say on my feet today. So for all these reasons, we believe that there are provisions within existing law for the declaration of income tax returns and for the declaration to the Integrity Commission of all assets, including incomes that had been, should have been periodically. And both of these, the Act, the Integrity Commission Act and the income tax law, they provide penalties for violations. It is not now coming to ask this government to agree to change laws to provide penalties. The penalties for violations of income tax return or for inadequate or for false returns are stated in the law. The penalties for non-declaration under the Integrity Commission Act are stated in the law. Therefore, the requirement of this government to come out to prescribe penalties seem to be an assault on the government, that we are acquiescing to a state where people are not punished for violation of the existing law. And for all those reasons, sir, I believe that I have this right that I insist, and with your leave, sir, to close this debate on this motion. Thank you. And answer the question before.
The issue, sir, is that is confusing the honorable member is the question of what is meant by dispose of. It could not mean dispose of, it could only mean dispose of in the favor of the move of the motion. But in this case, it has not been disposed of in favor of the move of the motion. It has been, they have lost the amendment. Yes. They have lost the vote on the amendment. So it is now a motion that is amended by the majority. It means then, as the speaker said, it means that as the speaker said, this motion could only be withdrawn with the consent of the House. That's the only way it could be. If we consent to the withdrawal, that's the only way it could be withdrawn, because it's not an original motion anymore.